If you're planning to study in France or you're already preparing for your move here, I'm pretty sure these are some of the biggest questions in your mind right now. Can I get a part-time job in France? Can I survive without completely depending on my parents? Can a student job pay my rent and groceries? Can I send money back home? Are internships actually easy to find? Should I even choose France if my plan is to work after graduation? And honestly, these are also some of the most common questions that I receive. Not just in YouTube comments, but also on Instagram DMs, LinkedIn messages, and conversations with students planning their move to France. And after living in France for almost 2 whole years, after applying to hundreds of internships, after trying to find work here, and after experiencing both good and bad situations here, I think it's finally time to answer this honestly. The reality is, France does offer opportunities, but the reality is also very different from what students imagine before coming here. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about whether international students can really earn enough in France, the truth about part-time jobs, the reality of internships, what exactly are apprenticeships, and whether you can realistically depend on your earnings after moving here. Hence, if you're someone planning to study in France, make sure you subscribe, because this France Roadmap series is basically everything that I wish someone had explained to me before I moved here. The beautiful parts, but also the difficult parts. Let's start with the biggest question. Can a student job in France pay for your life? And my honest answer is that it can be helpful, but you should not build your entire France plan around it. A student job can definitely reduce your financial pressure. For example, it can help you pay for groceries, small daily expenses, transportation, occasional outings. Depending on your income and lifestyle, it can even contribute towards your rent. But if your plan is, I will come to France and my student job will pay my tuition, rent, travel, and everything else, I would honestly ask you to rethink that plan, because tuition fees are a completely different responsibility. And your education should already have a financial plan before you come here, whether that is savings, family support, an educational loan, scholarships, or any other source. A student job should be considered as a support, not as your survival strategy. And honestly, I learned this lesson myself. Before moving to France, I also had this image in my mind. I thought that once I arrive, settle down, and understand everything, I'll find a part-time job. And I think many students have this expectation, because online, you mostly see these success stories where someone arrives abroad, finds a part-time job, starts earning, becomes independent. But in reality, the first few months are not always about earning. Sometimes they are simply about adjusting and adapting. And that's exactly what happened to me. When I arrived in France in September 2024, my first priority was not finding a job. It was surviving. And I don't mean surviving financially. I mean surviving emotionally and practically. Because when you move countries, everything changes at once. You have accommodation problems, paperwork, university stuff, new people, new culture, language barrier, daily responsibilities. And in my case, accommodation itself became a huge challenge. For almost 2 months, I was moving between different places, trying to figure out where I would stay. And to be honest, during that period, the idea of finding a part-time job wasn't even on my mind. I was simply trying to create stability. And I think this is something students should understand. Sometimes your first goal after arriving shouldn't be thinking that how quickly can I start earning. Instead, it should be how quickly can I build a stable life here. Because once your foundation is stable, then you can focus on opportunities. Now the second biggest question. Is it easy to find a part-time job in France? Honestly, it depends on a lot of factors, such as your city, your French level, your availability, your experience, and sometimes even your luck. But one thing I want to be very clear about is that not learning French will make things way much harder for you. I know some students ask, can I get a job in France without learning French? And the answer is maybe. But your options become much more limited because many student jobs involve communication, whether it's restaurants, shops, customer service, reception, administration. In any case, French becomes extremely important. And this is something I personally experienced. Before coming to France, I knew some basic French, but to be very honest, it was way too basic. Just enough for bonjour, merci, very simple conversations. Today, I can communicate much better. I would say I'm somewhere around B1 or B2 level, but I still know if I had started earlier, my journey would have been easier. Now, I want to share something very honestly, because when people ask me, can I find a student job in France? I always say, yes, you can, but please understand, not every opportunity will be the perfect opportunity. And sometimes, your first job experience abroad teaches you more than the money itself. In my case, my first part-time job experience was at an Indian restaurant. And when I got that opportunity, I was actually very happy because for me, it represented something bigger. It wasn't just about the money. It was about finally feeling, okay, I'm earning something myself in France. I'm becoming independent. And I was ready to work hard. I have never been afraid of working hard. But after starting, I realized that the reality was very different from what I had expected. My shift was supposed to finish at around 11 or 11:30 p.m. But most days, I reached home around 2 a.m. or even later. Because after the restaurant closed, there was still a lot of work. Moving tables, cleaning, preparing everything for the next day. And honestly, some of the things that I had to do were physically very demanding. I remember carrying heavy metallic tables and chairs, cleaning, doing everything almost alone. And even though my body was exhausted, I still thought, it's okay. I'm here to work. I'm here to learn. But the difficult part was not the work. It was the environment. Because after a few days, the owner started speaking to me disrespectfully, using words that were not acceptable. And eventually, I realized, no matter how much you need a job, you should never accept being treated disrespectfully. So after around 5 days, I decided to leave. And honestly, looking back, there is one thing I would have done differently. I should have asked for my payment for those days. At that time, I was just so focused on leaving that situation that I just didn't think about anything else. But it taught me an important lesson. Being an international student does not mean you should accept everything just because you need money. You still deserve respect. Now, I'm sharing this story not because I want to scare anyone, because honestly, many students have amazing experiences with their job. Some of my friends have worked in cafes, universities, restaurants, retail, different companies, and they had completely different experience. So please don't misunderstand. The point is not that student jobs are bad. It is that we should be going with realistic expectations. Now let's talk about something that surprised me even more than student jobs in France, the internships. Because many students think, okay, maybe finding a part-time job is difficult, but internships should be easier because I have a master's degree. And to be fair, I thought something similar, but the reality was very different. During my first year of master's, we had to complete an internship, and I started applying. A lot. And when I say a lot, it genuinely means hundreds of applications. I applied through LinkedIn, Welcome to the Jungle, Glassdoor, iAgora, Job Teaser, company career websites, spontaneous applications, networking, even physical CV drops. I literally tried everything. And honestly, the hardest part wasn't even the rejections. It was not knowing the reason behind them. Because most of the time, companies don't explain. They simply say, we chose another candidate. Or sometimes, they don't reply at all. And after a while, you start questioning yourself. Is my profile not good enough? Is my experience not enough? What am I even missing? And eventually, I reached a point where I was very close to the deadline. My university required us to have an internship. And finally, I accepted an unpaid internship opportunity with a company based in the Netherlands. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying unpaid internships are ideal, but at that moment, I had to make a practical decision. And to be honest, that experience taught me a lot. I worked with international clients, I learned new skills, I gained experience. So I'm grateful for what it gave me. But then something happened, something that I still remember. Around 30 minutes after signing that internship contract, I received a call from LVMH's Wines and Spirits division. They wanted to discuss my availability for an internship position that I had applied for 4 months ago. And I remember looking at my phone thinking, seriously? Right now? Because if that call had come earlier, maybe things would have been different. But I had already committed, and I couldn't just walk away. So I declined. And to be real, yes, sometimes I still think, what if? But at the same time, I also believe that every experience takes you somewhere. And that internship was also a part of my journey. Now, after going through this process, one thing I understood very clearly is applying online is important, but don't depend only on online applications. Because in France, especially as an international student, networking matters a lot. And I have personally seen this with a lot of my classmates. Some amazing opportunities came through professors, classmates, events, referrals, and the people they met professionally. Not because they were necessarily the smartest person in the room, but because people knew them, people remembered them. And even my first internship came through networking. Someone knew about the opportunity, I applied, I went through a proper process, and eventually I was selected. But without that connection, I might never have even discovered that opportunity. So my biggest advice would be that start networking from day one, not when you desperately need an internship, or not when graduation is close, from day one. Now there's another question students ask me. Okay, internships are difficult, but what about apprenticeships? And honestly, this is one opportunity in France that more students should understand. Because unlike a normal internship, an apprenticeship is a work-study system. Basically, you study and work at the same time. You become an employee of a company while continuing your education. Depending on the program and company, the company can contribute towards your education costs and you also receive a salary. So for many students, this can be an amazing opportunity because you're not only gaining professional experience, you are also reducing some of your financial pressure. But there is something extremely important to understand. Apprenticeships are not always easy to get. And once again, French language is a must because here you're not just doing a small student job. You are becoming part of a company. You have meetings, you communicate with colleagues, you handle responsibilities. So many companies expect a very strong level of French, sometimes even close to native level French. I personally did not do an apprenticeship, but I have friends who did, and I saw how much dedication it required. One of my friends was working in another part of France and would only come back to Montpellier occasionally to attend his classes. It is a serious commitment. So, if you're someone who's ready to improve your French significantly, an apprenticeship can be one of the best opportunities to combine studies and professional experience. Now, let's talk about one of the most emotional questions. Can I send money back to my parents after coming to France? And to be honest, I completely understand why students ask this question. Because many international students come from families who have invested a lot in them. Education loan, savings, years of planning. And naturally, you would want to give something back. You want your parents to feel that it was worth it. But realistically, during your student years, especially the first few years, you should not put that pressure on yourself. Because when you arrive, you are still building your own stability. You have rent, groceries, transportation, healthcare, university expenses, unexpected costs. And even if you earn through a student job, the money will first help you become independent. Sending significant money home becomes realistic mostly after graduation. When you have a full-time job, a stable income, no tuition burden, that is when you can genuinely start thinking about supporting your family. Hence, if there's one thing I want students to understand, it's this. Do not choose France based only on the idea of earning money. Choose France because you understand what this country has to offer you. Because every country has something different. France offers a different lifestyle, work-life balance, strong healthcare, cultural exposure, and international experience. But it also requires patience, adaptation, language learning, effort. Because no country is perfect. Every country will challenge you in a different way. Now, if I could go back and prepare for France again, what would I do differently? First, I would learn French much earlier. Not just basic phrases. I would genuinely focus on becoming comfortable before arriving. Because language opens doors. Second, I would start networking from the very beginning. Not when I need an internship or a job, but from the first semester itself. And third, I would focus more on building skills before I arrive. Because your degree matters, but your skills, your communication, your confidence, and your network also matter a lot. So if you're watching this video and thinking, maybe France is not possible for me because finding a job sounds difficult, please don't think that. Because difficult does not mean impossible. But I want you to come prepared. Don't come thinking, my part-time job will pay everything, or that I will immediately become financially independent, and also that everything will work out magically. Because studying abroad is not magic. It is growth, learning, struggling sometimes, but it is about becoming a stronger version of yourself. And honestly, that is also the most beautiful part. Because one day, when you finally get your first internship, or your first proper job, your first salary, you will understand why the difficult moments were worth it. And this is exactly why I created this France Roadmap series. Before moving here, I wish someone had honestly told me these things. Not only France is beautiful, or that you will have an amazing experience, but also the fact that it will be difficult sometimes. You will have to adapt. You will have to work hard. But you can do it. So if you're planning to study in France, I hope this video gave you a realistic picture. And if you have more questions about part-time jobs, internships, apprenticeships, or anything else related to student life in France, leave them in the comments. Because I'm about to start a series where I'll be answering your questions in detail. And in the next episode, we are going to answer another question that I constantly keep receiving. I have a background in finance, engineering, humanities, or management. Which masters should I choose in France? Because choosing the right degree can completely change your career opportunities. So no matter which background you're from, we will discuss the options that actually make sense for you. So if you're planning your future in France, do not miss the next episode. So I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye.